Today on Further Every Day, we'll be discussing The American Crisis, #1, a set of pamphlets that were written by the great Thomas Paine during the Revolutionary War. Also, speaking about the American Crisis, we'll be looking at the movements of China and America, and is there anything that we can learn or any of the American spirit that we can carry forward in the potential conflict? Also, what is a woman in society in regards to her relationship with men? We'll be talking about the back and forth between Tomi Lahren and Andrew Wilson, so-called self-proclaimed apologist from the podcast The Crucible. A little bit late, but better late than never. We'll talk about that. I think it's an interesting back and forth from Piers Morgan's show that we can kind of take some good thoughts away from. We'll also be talking about dire wolves. They're back. Let's get into it. Howdy, Jonathan Fiala for Further Every Day, sitting here in the chair of philosophy, and Miss Nikki's not here today. Normally she'd be sitting here in the chair of theology, which informs our philosophy, which then builds our culture. How's it going, Charlie?
Good. Very good.
So prayers for Miss Nikki. She's just not feeling too well today, but everything's fine. She's just having one of those mornings.
Yep.
So to Charlie's left, we got the Steve. How's it going?
Yes, sir. Being politically incorrect as normal and keeping the water warm downstream, sir.
Yeah, I don't want to know about the water downstream
That's
of you.
quite all right.
But
no problem.
You
and
do.
Yet he keeps saying that.
Yet he keeps saying that.
Right.
So thank you, Mr. Producer. That's Rai, the producer guy.
Hey guys.
Glad to have you there, sir, on the switchboard doing God's work. So, real quick, the crisis #1. Let's talk about the American Crisis before we throw up the first slide. The American Crisis, it was written by Thomas Paine, and you're familiar with Thomas Paine, right?
Yeah, and I love Thomas Paine. Very deep.
So
very introspective.
Brilliant writer, but one of the works that I've heard very little from is this. And we were looking about and saw this. I thought, wow, this is an interesting pamphlet. Yep. You are familiar with it. I promise you, you have heard the opening from The American Crisis. Go ahead, Mr. Producer. These are times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country, but he that stands it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered, yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph.
That is deep.
By the way, do you know where he was writing this on?
I do not know.
It was in the winter of 1776. We had just declared the war of, we just declared independence, and we had just started fighting the Brits. This is in December of 1776, right before Valley Forge. They're about to cross the Delaware River, and he is writing this pamphlet, which is later published in late December of 1776, on the drumhead of a march, of the marching drill sergeant's drum, in the cold dead of winter. Think about that for just a moment.
Yep. Yeah.
Pause on that. This guy is writing. He doesn't have a desk. He's writing on the drumhead of a drill sergeant that he's borrowed.
Who thinks to do that? I mean, literally, who thinks to write something like that on a drumhead in the middle of a war? One of the things, and I want to encourage our viewers to think about something. The one thing I really appreciate Miss Nikki, one of the qualities that she has, she's always been about taking pictures. I'm not. And yet, it's the pictures that preserve the history of your heritage. When you think about what Thomas Paine did here, writing on a drumhead, and I'm not sure what he thought would happen after that, but it's been preserved, and we have the opportunity to look back on it. And it's one of the most incredible, most enduring statements that we have in the history of our country.
Correct.
And
These are times that try men's souls.
I want to encourage our listeners, preserve your history. take pictures of the kids, take pictures of the family, take pictures of the happy, the fun times and things like that, because those are precious. But also don't be afraid to take pictures of the difficult moments.
Well, in this exact moment, he's getting it ready for publishing to the Philadelphia press. And what he's hoping here is that people start to buy in to the coming conflict.
There's no social media.
There's no social media, and there's a reason why I'm bringing this up right now. Think about the coming conflict that we're about to see. We're in a Cold War. We just started a Cold War with China. It is an economic Cold War, but it's very quickly about to turn hot. I think that Thomas Paine's words here are very applicable today in the year of our Lord 2025, April.
Yep.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here thinking, Thomas Paine, they're getting ready to cross the Delaware River. It's in winter. And you think about crossing the Delaware River in winter. Anybody that lives up there, Charlie lived up in that part of the country.
It's extremely cold.
You know what it's like during that time of year trying to cross the Delaware River. Now, this guy's getting ready to cross. He knows what's getting ready to happen. The sacrifice that he's getting ready to make, what's getting ready to happen, all of these men, but yet he takes the time to write this on a drumhead.
Because he has to. We
Correct.
have to mobilize in this moment in 1776. But also, I'm going to say something today. We have to start to mobilize as a country. We have to start to think in the same direction. Like it or not, Trump is president. And guess what? We're going into a tariff and trade war with the largest superpower outside of our own. We're about to have a direct conflict with China. And it could be economic. And as we'll get to a little bit later, if you've been watching the news, record deployment of U.S. forces in the Indo-Pacific theater.
Yes.
It's coming. It's interesting. We better be ready. And look, if these people who were normal, everyday fathers could step out of their comfort zone, step out of their home, and they could fight for their women and children, the least we could do is endure some discomfort,
Yes.
some price increases. Yes, maybe you don't get to go on vacation this year. Hopefully it doesn't turn into World War III. But I think it was going to one way or the other. The question is do we meet it early or do we meet it later? And do we meet it on our terms versus China's terms?
And you know what? Can I just say one more thing here? Folks, we don't have a right to the lifestyle that we live.
Mm-hmm.
It is a privilege. Freedom, the only currency for freedom is blood. And we must remember that.
Yeah.
We're not entitled to this. We're blessed. We are absolutely blessed in this country to have what we have, to live the way that we live. But we're not entitled to this.
Indeed.
And I think we would do well to remember it.
Indeed. So, next clip from Mr. Producer. So, going further in the American crisis, number one, what we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven only knows how to set a proper price upon its goods, and it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Mm-hmm. It's funny that you said that.
Ooh.
Because what we value matters.
Yes.
Do we value comfort or do we value freedom? Are we willing to pay the cost?
Yeah.
Now, hopefully we don't go into a World War II. Okay? Hopefully we don't end up in that situation. And look, I have really, really high hopes that this pans out quite well. There's a really, really good chance that we're looking at a smart man in the Oval Office.
He has shown himself to be very shrewd and well thought out in what he's doing. And if you want to talk about a game of checkers or a game of chess, he's playing chess on another level from most other leaders. And I think that bodes well for us. And just so that I'm clear with all of our listeners, I'm not saying Trump is God for us.
No.
Far be it from me to even think that. But I will say this, there's many things that he's been accused of, and I really don't think people do understand who he really is and what he's like. They've taken the narrative from the media, and some of them have run with it, and shame on them. You know, I will say this, I'm not a Bill Maher fan. I'm thankful that he went to Trump and that they had a pleasant conversation, because if there's anything that came out of that, it was this. Two people that disagree can have a civil conversation, and kudos to both of them for doing it.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you value? I think that's one of the primary lessons that we can take out of Thomas Paine's crisis, the American crisis. Number one, what do you value? To go just a little bit further, Britain, with an army to enforce her tyranny, has declared that she has a right not only to tax, but to bind us in all cases whatsoever. And and if being bound in that manner is not slavery, then there is not such a thing as slavery upon the earth. Even when the expression is impious, for so unlimited a power can belong only to God.
This speaks volumes about today.
I think it does.
Yes,
I think
does.
it does.
Because what is the progressive left wanting to do? It is to bind and control.
Correct. And the thing that kills me, the thing that absolutely kills me, is it's the same argument as we had before. It's the same argument with the Brits,
Yes.
with the Americans,
Yes.
for the North versus the South. And by the way, not all the South and not all the North, but I'm just saying the whole argument about slavery. What are we going to do with these tariffs if it becomes more expensive to buy from China? What are we going to do with this emancipation of the slaves if it becomes more expensive to harvest cotton? It is the same argument, because when you realize that in 2000, 2001, that era when we allowed China to start free trade with the West, effectively saying you can pit slave labor against honest capitalistic labor, it was a slow hemorrhage. And we've seen this in our GDP. We've seen this in the value of the dollar.
Yes.
We're competing against slave labor. There had to come a point where we confronted China. We never should have allowed China into the family of nations, so-called, until they westernized, until they stopped abusing their people and dumping cheap goods onto the market. Yes, Steve?
Yeah, think of this. Here's a concept, something I've been just kind of rolling around in my mind, and it's kind of with this right here topic that we brought up, it's kind of popped out in front of my brain, and I don't know how you guys are going to think about this.
Sure.
It might take a little hold on it with this idea. With this, the Democrats have been bringing in all of these illegals that have been coming in, piling in. We're getting all of these tariffs that are happening with China. Who knows how long this is going to go on? The Democrats are really having a hard time with all of these illegals. And what if something happens with these tariffs, and how long is this going to continue? What if it continues for who knows how long?
For Trump's whole term. Sure.
Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? We don't know the future. What if the plan for the Democrats all along was to put all of these illegals in a situation to create cheaper goods in
Well, that's by
production
definition.
to create just like what's happening in China, but to produce it here in America and put
Yeah.
the illegal aliens in these positions
By
as
definition,
workers
that is the
and
purpose.
pay them cheaper than Americans and do the same type of thing that's going on over in China, but have a subclass of people as illegal aliens. You know what I'm saying?
So, yeah, so someone in the comment section is mirroring you, Cultivator63. By the way, if you're one of our regular listeners, hundreds of thousands of downloads on the podcast at Further Every Day, anywhere you can find podcasts. Thank you. We are also live on Sundays, 1 to 3 Central, on PSB, anywhere you can find PSB, DLive, Fun.live, and Rumble at PSB. So someone on the PSB chat dropped this in there. They said, illegal aliens equal slave labor. That is the purpose of H-1B visas as they're currently structured. That is the purpose of illegal immigration. That is 100% the purpose. And it is to the detriment of naturally born citizens or naturalized citizens of America. It is to the detriment. My mom works at a company where there are people who are working there who they very much could have picked an American. There are a lot of reasons why they don't pick an American.
Yep.
That happens all the time. And that's why, look, you're not a racist if you oppose the H-1B because you are tired of Americans losing out on proper jobs. Post-COVID job growth was almost exclusively to H-1B and to people who had immigrated. Post-COVID job growth, the 4 million jobs that were just added. I don't have a slide for that, but that is what we're looking at. It is not fair. It is not true. You're not racist for that. I would say be careful, measure your words, be careful how you say it, just so that people don't have a reason that they can accuse you of something that's a red herring. Racism is often used as a red herring. Just make sure that you have a good, well-rounded response that you can give someone. Say, look, I don't care where you come from. I want you to be here legally. I want you to be an American. I want you to become an American. And that used to be non-controversial. I was telling Charlie the other night, there was a musical where the Happiest Millionaire is a Disney musical, came out shortly after Mary Poppins and Sound of Music. And they were trying to make it their next big event. You know, Sound of Music, we were talking about it, it grossed the equivalent of $2.6 billion today. It was $285 million back in 1965. By the way, that should also make you very angry as to how much money has depreciated. That's the franchised banking system, but that's a different issue. Anyway, The Happiest Millionaire. Disney used to sing songs about immigrants coming to America, keeping their heritage, but becoming fully American. That used to not be a controversial issue, but the Marxist critical theory school of thought that came over, by the way, from Germany, in the 1800s, same cesspit that generated Hitler, the Holocaust, Stalin, all of that, the same cesspit of bad ideas came over here. Ever since that has infested America, we've had cultural shame. We've had cultural shame, and it's just not a good thing. Someone says, how do you regulate that? Is it just good business? Trump did and does that.
So is the question
on the H-1B.
Okay.
And I totally agree. Here's the thing. There is a law that regulates that you have to solicit people who are Americans who are qualified for the job. We just need to start prosecuting companies that discriminate.
And
we have the remedy.
Nailed it.
But the thing is, your remedy isn't cheap. So you can, it's like this whole thing with China, right? It's with the American Revolution. They could have decided to continue to sit under the boot of Britain.
Yep.
Upon their neck. They could have sat there and said, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. I'm just going to let it go further. I'm going to let it go longer. Or they could stand up and start, in their case, they started shooting. And I think that there was a reason for that. There was a good setup where we're nowhere near that at the moment. Where we are right now, you can allow the government to continue to take and become more and more tyrannical, or you could start using your legal remedies right now. If you start using your legal remedies right now. You need to start prosecuting. If you are passed over for a job and a H-1B visa is put in there in place, there should be a way to civilly pursue these people. And there are think tanks that we need to start to talk to who have the president's ear. I was talking to someone from the America First think tank policy foundation, Kash Patel and all those folks are part of that. Started asking, actually had a nice chat with one of the ladies from that group and asked her to start talking about making it a federal crime to interfere with a federal election. I know it's to the states right now, and we don't want the federal government to be able to cram stuff down. But when you kick people out of the polling location, like you saw at the TCF Center in 2020,
that's a problem.
That should be a federal crime.
Yep.
That's no longer a state level crime. That should be a federal crime because you're interfering in a federal election, or there should be some remedy. I understand that the states need to be able to do their own elections their way. There's a state sovereignty there that has to be protected, but there has to be some way on behalf of the aggregate that they can say, wait a minute. You are running your election for federal offices in a very, very wicked way. We should be able to say, no, you can't kick poll watchers out of the TCF Center. By the way, you're not crazy. For those of you who tried to tell people that the folks at the TCF Center who were saying, stop the count, while they put up those Bristol boards over the windows during 2020. By the way, something like that happened here in Houston, where we're from. The people who were saying stop the count weren't reporters. They weren't Trump supporters. They were people who were counting the vote 5 minutes earlier, and they've been physically removed by Detroit police officers and by members of the unions. We have to start prosecuting these people. And so there's two things. There are remedies that exist, and there are remedies that need to be put into place.
And for that listener, that's a great question. If you have I don't know when's the last time you've gotten a job at a particular company, but when they come out with the form that says you need to show that you're a U.S. citizen, that's one of those remedies right there. I got to thinking about this as we were approaching this particular topic. If you think about how this has affected America, and this started back in the 50s, the 40s. Charlie, how did that start back then? When your orange grove pickers came in from Mexico, when your peach pickers came in from Mexico, that contributes to that. Now, you might be saying, well, yeah, but that keeps the cost of our food down. Yeah, but
because you're literally abusing poor.
That's right.
You're abusing the poor.
And I don't want to say that's slave labor, but for lack of a better phrase, that is what it is. That's no different than what China's doing when they're making different products and sending them to the U.S. It's the same thing.
Yep.
It's just done via a different method. So I think that people need to understand those remedies are in place, but I'm in total agreement with what you said. It's got to be prosecuted.
Correct.
And companies don't like that.
Correct. And we, look, as a Christian conservative, honestly, I just thought of this. James 5:4 is the verse that comes to mind. Behold, the hire of the laborers who reaped down your fields, Amen. Which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. The word Sabaoth in this case is the Lord of hosts, of the army of God. He's saying, if you're going to keep back the wages, we're just going to bring in cheap labor and underpay them. You're contending with the God who is the God of the armies of heaven. That is literally what the Bible says. God does not care. God does not care for that. He does not like that.
And let's just remind people of the hypocrisy of those on the left. You want to bring people in because they need to, quote unquote, fulfill those jobs that nobody in America wants to do. Let's ask the next question, because it's certainly not the statement that you're making, and pay them the wages that Americans would get if they were doing that same job. Mm-hmm. Now talk to me.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
Yeah, it's purely from a position
It is.
of opportunism.
That's exactly what it is.
And
And,
look-
I wish people would see that.
And so that's where I do think there's a chance for us to rebalance the scales in a way. Look, I don't mind it if someone comes here and they're willing to work for less. I mind it if we bring someone in illegally
To
and
work for less.
They have to stay under the radar and
Yep.
they have to work for less. The reason I'm against that is because we have no-go zones here in Texas where you have cartel-run, effectively slums, where people who are being trafficked for labor or for, other purposes,
Bad things.
men for the labor, women for the streets. There are places that are so unsafe that you can't even send an ambulance into
And
locally.
you have
here.
one right outside Houston.
Yeah, it's serious. It's real.
Yes.
And that's what happens when you oppress the poor. You create a secondary class, and it is not a good thing. And America has done that before. By the way, it's the Democrats who did it last time, too. It's the Democrats who interned the Chinese into camps, or Japanese, rather, into camps. It was the Democrats who supported Jim Crow. The KKK is an artifact of the Democratic Party. The Black Panthers, again, like just again, go through who these people are and who they became and what they are. It's the Democrats.
Know your history.
Know your history. And that's why we're going back a little bit. We're taking a little bit of a break from the Federalist Papers because I think Thomas Paine's The Crisis, the American Crisis, #1,
Very apropos.
apropos
Yes.
for today.
Very much.
Speaking of the American crisis, I want to go ahead and move on to our current crisis. Now,
President
that was fast.
My bad.
What was that, producer?
Right, the
I
producer
wanted
guy.
to set it up just real quick. because
Listen, I thought he was gonna go further into
Yeah.
what the crisis.
No, you're good,
document.
dude.
Sorry.
You're good. So we're learning. We're learning. It's all good. So no, the American crisis right now, we're seeing that Canada and the EU, or sorry, China and the EU. Jeez, I'm tired.
It's-
guys.
yeah.
I had a late. Hold on, I am so tired.
We're like
Wires are crossed.
we got
Ryan,
jumping ahead of time, and then we got
John Arthur,
John Arthur is
tired,
like
guys.
Listen,
out
guys,
of
we
time.
had a
So
yeah,
we had a
long day
a
yesterday.
long theological night last night.
So
Yeah.
and
okay. So
Take
Charlie's
two.
got
Take two.
Charlie's got no time, and I'm like
you're
beyond
Steve,
Stuck in time.
and you're Steve. So let's try that one more time. Sorry, guys. Real quick. So China and the EU are starting to make lovey-dovey noises, especially China towards the EU. Now, I do think that most of the EU is seeing the right side of things. We're getting some promises that they're going to start to buy energy from us as opposed to Russia, which is a huge benefit. I think that that's a win. However, China's making some inroads of all places, they're actually making it into Spain. Mr. Producer, now could you play cut #4 for me, please?
President Xi Jinping on Friday urged the EU to join China in defending globalization and opposing unilateral acts of bullying. That was a clear swipe at renewed US tariffs under President Donald Trump. The comments, Xi's first publicly since Trump's tariff move, are also a sign of how Beijing is looking to mend a straining relationship with the EU to weather the trade war with the US. But diplomats and analysts say ending a prolonged stalemate between the world's second and third largest economies won't be easy. During his visit to Beijing on Friday, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez said there were opportunities for China and the EU to deepen their ties.
Profundizar esa relación bilateral entre España y China y entre China y la Unión Europea.
But he said it would be important for China to be sensitive to European demands for a more balanced relationship. The EU and other major trading partners argue that Chinese overinvestment in manufacturing is flooding the world with goods. Beijing accuses the EU of being protectionist. European diplomats, having seen years of discussions that resulted in no progress, are not holding high hopes for a reset. One, speaking anonymously, said China needs to show that they're serious, while another said China sees an opportunity for concessions but isn't really interested in improving ties. Spanish officials have rejected US warnings that a pivot to China would be, quote, cutting their own throat. Instead, Sanchez appears to be seeking to position Spain as an interlocutor between China and the EU.
Thank you, Mr.
Recent
Producer.
developments
How about China gets to show nothing because they've already shown us everything we need to see? How about that, Europe? How about that? Or maybe you can enjoy Russia. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you guys are sponging off the U.S. You promised, if you're part of the EU, if you're part of NATO, rather, if you're part of NATO, and most of the EU is part of NATO, you promised 2%, 3% of your GDP. What are you guys paying? Like 1%?
Not even.
0.9% in some cases. Some of them are. So Poland is one of the few exceptions, and they didn't do it always. But there are a couple who are actually paying their GDP into defense. You're not even paying the United States of America for your defense. You're paying for your own defense. And then you guys have free internet. You have free healthcare. You have free all this and that as a government right. You have large social safety nets because you're taxing your people at ridiculous rates. And then you guys expect us to come in and defend. By the way, while you're tariffing the United States of America, while you're tariffing us, which is something that, again, that came out of World War II. And that was, look, we understand that the economy's kind of wrecked over there in Europe after World War II, even though that's y'all's mess. We'll still be nice. We'll go ahead and set the American dollar as a reserve standard. And you guys can tariff us for a little while. That's fine. It's been, what, 80 years? Can we call it off?
That's just a little while. That's not 100. See, once you get to 100 years, that becomes a while.
It's like a long, long time. I'm just tired of it. It's like you guys have been doing this for so long, and then the moment the United States says, wait a minute, we got to rebalance the trade. And by the way, if you look at Trump, I really do think he's looking for free trade, relatively free trade. I think he is going to leave potentially some tariffs up in general, but you're looking. You were saying you were catching a news story right before we came in here. He's already done some.
He's backpedaled on the electronics.
Well, not
tariffs.
backpedaled. He has set tariffs lower for Apple
Yes.
and Samsung and some of their interests, which include China.
And that's the thing.
More to be seen there. We'll see what it ends up being.
And you know what? There's all sorts of opinions on the tariffs. I've got my own. Quite frankly, I would leave those kind of things on there. I think Xi is really in a bad spot. I think he may, I don't know, but my gut tells me he may be on the edge of losing his power. And that
it's dangerous. He's in a dangerous.
He's in a really bad spot.
I agree.
Putin is too, by the way.
Yes. So, and I'm not saying that Trump is trying to get him out of there. I'm not saying that. I don't think Trump really cares because it doesn't matter who you put in there. It's going to be tough, period. But I do think that probably one of the things that Trump would like to see, and I wish he'd be a little more vocal about it, is quit treating your people the way that you do.
Yep.
Straighten up. And that, quite frankly, is where the EU could have been very strong. You want deeper ties with us? You know what? Shape up and do your people right.
Yep.
Quit treating them like slaves. And then maybe we can talk. But that's not what they did.
And I think that's ultimately, at least I hope that's ultimately the purpose. That's why I want tariffs on China. I want to see them westernize. I want to see them have more freedom. I think that one of the greatest injustices that's occurring right now here on this earth is that we are buying so much from China.
Yes.
And we are specifically propping up. Imagine this. Imagine you have a bakery next to you, and the whole town is supporting this bakery. This bakery is owned by a man. This man beats his wife, has 10 kids, and they've all been working in the bakery for no pay other than what they need to eat. Wouldn't there come a point where you would say, we got to arrest this guy because we see his kids that are black and blue, but maybe you can't arrest him? Should you post police officers with the town money spending on them to protect that bakery, their goods, their services? Should you be protecting Chinese trade as it's moving across across the world? Oh wait, we have to, because who would pick the cotton if we didn't support slavery, if we didn't support Chinese trade? We have built our industry on the peculiar institution, as Washington called chattel slavery in the South. We have built our world trade on the peculiar institution of Chinese malfeasance towards their own people. Now, I don't think that Trump is necessarily doing this for that reason. I think he's looking at more from the American perspective.
Yes.
But I think that there might be a net good that comes out of this in this unexpected way, or some people hope, like me, hoping that China ultimately has to start paying their own way. If they start to pay their own way, they are going to have so many problems until they choose freedom. Freedom is actually cheaper than slavery.
Yes.
Because they're relying on us, and we are subsidizing them because we protect them.
Yep.
We invested them. They steal an estimated, how many $1 billion a year in IP fraud is it? It is billions.
Staggering.
Yeah, they steal billions in patents and then reproduce it with cheap makeups and then turn around and sell it throughout the world.
Yep.
And people need to understand that we actually, I want to be careful here because there's a lot of hardworking people in China that have worked so hard to produce something for nothing. And we've basically funded the Chinese government.
We funded the slave trade in China. And I've been saying that for years.
Yeah.
I've been saying, look, if you want to be woke and you want to be upset about the plight of African Americans in 1600s, awesome, cool. You know what you could put your effort to as well? The Chinese, the Uyghurs, the people who are still in Africa in the Democratic Republic of Congo, who are 15,000 miners who are bare-handed mining, with their hands and a pickaxe. They are mining the cobalt that goes and makes your Tesla and the battery for your smartphone. Maybe we could focus a little bit of energy on that. I'm not saying forget the past. We're all about the past here. Like
learn from it.
We're all about looking to it. But also, if you don't have application from the past, then it's just a exercise and
it's futile.
Mental masturbation. You're just going back and you're looking over and over and over and over again. Forgive the phrase, but that's what it is. You're just enjoying focusing on the past for its own sake. There's no growth. There's no benefit. There's no fruit, if I can say it that way. There's no benefit to you doing that. So I say that it's generally a fail for the woke left because they are specifically right now lobbying, and the neocons are lobbying for free trade, which is anything but free right now.
Good word there, the neocons too.
So next cut, Mr. Producer, as we see, and this is not an audio cut, so you can just throw it up there. As we see, we actually have the record deployment of B-2 stealth bombers to Diego Garcia in the Indo-Pacific Theater. You're looking at on the right side there on the tarmac, and you have some KC-130s on the left side. If you're listening to this, I'm sorry, on audio, we're just looking at some of the satellite footage from Diego Garcia. You're looking at 25% at least of the Americans' stealth bomber arsenal positioned for China and Iran, which I repeat myself. Same thing. Thank you, Mr. Producer. If you have a proxy war with Iran over their new nuclear armament, you're going to quickly involve China. Now, I'm sure President Trump is aware of this, and he's walking accordingly. But these are times that try men's souls.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to make a decision. Am I going to support this attempt to break away from the New World Order? Americans have to make that decision. Do we want to break away from the New World Order, or do we want to continue to allow them to step on our neck with their boot until eventually we don't have any freedom, and all the comfort that you're enjoying right now, your children and grandchildren will not be able to enjoy. It'll all go away.
I tell you what, I like my freedom.
I like my freedom
and I don't
too.
like getting my neck stepped on.
Indeed.
I'd be happy to be out of NATO.
I think we definitely need to look at this. This is from the Landrys. Why is America in this economic despair? Look no further than Bill Clinton's NAFTA and the Federal Reserve Act
Great.
of 1913.
That's a great point.
Totally
I will
agree.
say this. I totally agree with him on the NAFTA. I want to go back a couple presidents, though. Who is the one that got us into bed with China? Mm-hmm. It was Nixon.
Yep.
So I do totally agree with those statements there. As a matter of fact, what's interesting, he brought up the NAFTA issue. I was just telling my son the other day, I actually wrote a letter, I believe it was to George H.W. Bush. He was the one that did this. Well, Clinton, sorry. This was a really bad thing to do.
Yep.
This was not good for America. You could see it, you could smell it. This was not good, and that is a fantastic point to bring out.
So you're looking at almost a half a century of bad policy.
Yes.
Did we really think that Donald Trump was going to be able to wave some pen and
Yeah.
hippity boppity boo and fix the entire world economy?
Yeah.
No.
No.
Right. Well, some people apparently. So it's going to take some pain, and this is what we elected him for. And I'm thankful.
Don't I just sign my name to a piece of paper and everything gets better?
Yeah, exactly.
Well-
Carol Sorensen, the problem is getting everyone to take a step at the right time. The time is now. It's always the time.
Yeah.
Move.
But you know
Now's the
what?
time to move.
And this is Trump is truly amazing in some different things. He has been able to coalesce people from the left to look at, hey, let's work together. And they have. A Tulsi Gabbard, I would have never dreamed that a Tulsi Gabbard would have involved herself in a Republican administration. And here she is.
It's a wild thing.
It is. I would have never I could never fathom an RFK Jr.
Yep.
being involved, and here he is. You know what Trump's doing though? He has now expanded that internationally. And here's the key, folks. I'm gonna tell you right now. Here's what you want to watch for, because it's already starting to. It's being attempted. Satan's greatest trick is to divide and conquer. Okay, Trump has put these tariffs on. The name of the game for China, and China is the one that's in the hole. They are the ones that are in the bad spot. What is China trying to do? Divide and conquer.
Starting with Spain right now.
I was going to say,
breaking off.
why did they go and make that? And by the way, one that we haven't talked about, who was the first country that China went to? Australia. Mm-hmm. And Australia said, thanks, but no thanks.
Go pound sand.
That's right. Where's the next place? Well, now let's go to the EU. They're going to play this game. And guys, if we see countries starting to peel off, that's a problem.
We need to figure out how to reel them in.
We have to be united in this.
Because China is an evil organization. They're an evil empire, and they need to be ended.
And we are not saying that the Chinese people themselves are evil.
The empire is evil.
Yes.
Speaking of evil and division, what's happened to the family? What's happened to marriage? What's happened to, we have the whole question, what is a woman? But there's been a debate recently, and better late than never. We're here now. We'll talk about it. There's been a little bit of a debate. Men have responsibilities in the household.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Men have responsibilities. Okay,
Aye.
cool.
Double I.
Do women have responsibilities in the household?
Ooh.
Oh.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Do they have responsibilities to society? Let's talk about it, because on Piers Morgan's Uncensored, there was some interesting back and forth a week or two ago. And Piers Morgan had a panel, and this came to my attention. I thought it was worth digging into. Tomi Lahren and Andrew Wilson had a bit of a spate. And I find it fascinating because it shows some of the worldview that is in the right wing. And I really think we have a broken set of worldviews and warring factions within the right wing. And it is going to destroy the message. It is going to destroy truth as understood by the people. And without further ado, I think we'll go ahead and run it. Tomi Lahren, Fox News contributor for years, her own podcast, Andrew Wilson, self-styled apologist and podcast host of The Crucible. Mr. Producer.
So I think over the last probably 10 years, there has been what I call the pussification of men. It was everything should be about your emotions and your feelings, and men were emasculated, and this whole concept of toxic masculinity warped the minds of a lot of young men. And they felt masculine, they wanted to be masculine, but society was telling them they should be softer, that it was being toxically masculine if you wanted to play sports and chop wood and go to war. And so men were so emasculated and so beat down that then there was this revolution of what was actually toxic masculinity, the Tate brothers and others, which I feel as a female that doesn't represent true masculinity. That to me represents duty. And as a woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money. I see that as being actually masculine. So I think over the last probably 10 years,
that clip right there, she starts off really strong. I think she does start off with something strong. She details and articulates that there's a problem in the West where young men have been ultimately failed. We've told young men that it's not good to be masculine. I agree with her 100%. She's correct. And she very, very quickly and articulately gets to that. One of the things I've noticed about Tomi Lahren is that she's never talked about women and what women are supposed to do. And Andrew Wilson is about to attempt to tackle that. Before we get to it, Steve has a look on his face.
Yeah, but what's wrong with chopping wood as a man?
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? She was talking here and talking, no, that's good, but I want a man that does this. And it's like, I was listening to her, and it's like,
well, she
doesn't want a man that has the masculinity of chopping wood and all the things she was saying before, but her masculinity in men needs to be this, not this.
Let me answer that. Her response, and here's the problem. The right often does this. We have a reactionary worldview where, ew, I don't like that, and I'm going to put it over here. Ew, I don't like that. I'm against that. Why? Why do you not like that? Tomi Lahren has seen people like Andrew Tate, who smoke cigars, drink, booze, and they have, some of these people are go out in the woods and say, oh, hey, I'm a masculine man. I'm going to chop wood. And that's what makes me masculine. She's listing these things off. She doesn't speak to, we have these men who are chauvinistic, who are selfish, who are prideful. She doesn't talk about that. She can only speak to the things that they do pridefully, chauvinistically. They say that this makes me better than women. And again, I don't even think Andrew Tate necessarily holds some of the things that she says. I don't like Andrew Tate. I think I've said this before, but just in case people listening don't misunderstand me, I do think that Andrew Tate says some really good stuff, and he also has said some pretty horrific stuff. And he's done like his whole business model coming into the internet as breakthrough success monetarily was through pimping women through cameras online. So be that said, no one on this panel has a particular love for Andrew Tate. However, going after the trappings of what a man like that says and does and connoting that with a toxic masculinity, I think is a fail. But I think it does also drive away from the point. She does generally say, hey, we have lost our way on what masculinity is, and we've told boys that they can't be masculine, but I don't like this thing over here. And she's not wrong that the Andrew Tate, I own you, you are my slave mantra is kind of, it's repulsive.
I was going to say, very repulsive. Yeah.
So she's not wrong.
It's offensive.
But Andrew Wilson then comes in and he says this, and I think that this is, again, a reaction to Tomi Lahren. Go ahead, Mr. Producer.
But what we're seeing now is these young men who
she's gonna do a little bit more. Keep
Andrew
going.
Tate and the Tate brothers.
No, keep going. Keep going.
But what we're seeing now is these young men who look at Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers, and they see somebody who's just quite frankly a douchebag and disrespects women. And because they've been so emasculated, they're like, oh, great, that's a manly man. But that's not right either. So at some point, I think we'll go back to maybe meeting in the middle here. You can be a man who has feelings and emotions, but you can also go to war and protect and defend your family. I'm hoping we can get back there. But what we're seeing now is these young men who look at...
That's the lack of a worldview.
So she doesn't have a strong worldview. And I'm going to say that she has the trappings of what she wants. She wants the light.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what the light bulb is.
That's a good way to say that.
She wants the light. She doesn't understand what a light bulb is. Now, Andrew Wilson kind of comes in from a very different angle, and he responds this way, and I think that this is valuable. Why am I not getting any audio, sir?
Uh-oh.
Let's see real quick.
Boy, that would have been a good one to play, too. Mm-hmm. Stand by.
1 second.
I think, though, when you talk about the masculinity thing, when you talk about the male versus female thing, we have really hurt the masculinity side. I've always said that God created man to conquer, to go forth and to conquer victory. And we have done a lot of pushing that down. Every time that we give awards to all the participants, that's a form of pushing it down. And that's not what we want to be doing. We really need to stress to our boys, you need to, if you didn't win, you don't go and sulk about it. Get your butt up, you work harder at it, and let's conquer the next time.
We're going to try real quick here. 1 second.
Okay.
There you go. All right. So real quick, sorry for the technical issue there. But I think that was an interesting take from Wilson.
It was.
Because what Wilson's ultimately saying is that you have a failure of responsibilities and roles being delegated. Now, I do think that Andrew Wilson is so pro-natalist that he almost becomes solely natalist. And I think that robs and does damage to the image of marriage. I think it's absolutely horrific in some of the stuff that he says.
And it really does damage to his argument.
Correct. Because, again, he claims to be coming from the Greek Orthodox view. And I think that there's a lot of value in what he's saying. If men's responsibility is to build society, and I'm so sorry that Miss Nikki was feeling sick today because she would have had a field day with this. Mm-hmm. What is woman's responsibility to society? If men are supposed to create and build the roads and build the house and protect the house, what's the woman's job in society as a whole? As a general rule, not as not as a lock-knee step every woman. Because who can build? Men. Mm-hmm. Who can have children? Not men.
Not men. That's right.
Not men.
Thank you very much.
So you can have it educated.
negative
bad way,
right.
but
You can have an educated. So someone, Carol Sorensen says, "I beg to differ. I have nieces, and they're in their 40s that are virgins. They're godly women and educated, highly intelligent." That's, by the way, that's one of the things I think about Andrew Wilson. He does generalize sometimes. He's very much not careful. I want to be careful that I say this. I think Andrew has a lot of merit in some of his arguments, but I feel that he often loses people's intention.
Yes.
Christ came with a very, very different attitude than Andrew does. And I want to say, when people are apologists, we should be careful to make sure that we are winning the person and not just the argument. If you win the argument, but you leave the person walking away feeling so butthurt that they're never going to consider changing, I think you did fail the mission. And
I would say that what she should understand for us doing this segment, we're not picking sides here. This is not a Tomi Lahren versus Andrew Wilson.
With
this
the winner.
right.
Yeah.
This is it's a reminder of the importance of our apologetic approach in how we explain things. Because quite honestly, and you and I talked about this earlier in the week, I'm not a fan of either one of these two.
I don't think they did a good job articulating any sort of cogent worldview. And we'll go a little bit further in just a moment. But I do think that Wilson lays out an important question. If men have responsibility, what do women? And before we go further, I just want to let you know where I'm coming from. My father was the breadwinner in our house until he got very sick. And my educated, intelligent, well-rounded mother went into the workforce. And you know what? When my dad was sick, my mom took care of it. And she worked her way into corporate America, into upper management. Okay? And she's a hard worker. She is a double degree. She's a chem bio major. Okay? Double degree, finished without debt, worked as a tech writer before she met my father, owned her own house. I'm all for this woman, okay? I'm all for this type of person. The Proverbs 31 woman is an educated, eloquent, intelligent woman. Be very, very careful when we lay this out, because this is where I think Andrew Wilson misses the mark.
And this is where you're coming from, the issue of natalist.
And this is where I'm saying sometimes Christians become so pro-natalist that we are solely natalist. And that is a mistake, because you do violence to the whole purpose. And I just want to lay this out real quick. I was going to wait to the end, but I think it's important because, I'm seeing the way some people are responding. If you fail to realize what marriage is at its core, you're going to have, and society is built on the foundation, the bedrock of the family, which marriage is the foundation, the bedrock of that. You have a beautiful image that when God created the universe, he created a man and a woman, and he created them in a specific way so that when the woman receives from the man and the woman come together, there is this mystical moment where a new life is born. That is salvation laid out in the act of procreation. Not to be too graphic here, but that's what God laid out into this. But also, even further than that, you have the man who comes to the woman in the courtly relationship. The man comes to the woman if everything's ordered. He comes to the woman, he knocks, he pursues, he woos, and then the woman responds to him. Christ comes to you. He pursues you. He woos you. And if you open up to him, there's a new relationship born. There is something beautiful. Now, if you reduce it down to you're planting seeds in a garden and you're just picking the fruit, you do tremendous violence to the institution, to the sacrament of marriage. You fail to lay out the beauty that God has set aside and ordained for marriage. So I think that people like Andrew Wilson, I mean, God bless him, awesome that you're out there, and I think there are people who have benefited from it, but his manner is poor, and I do think that he could fix that. But let's hear a little bit more from both of them real quick. Mr. Producer, next clip, please.
I love this whole thing of like, if you're a female conservative and you don't believe that men should be douchebags that all of a sudden you're a covert feminist. Call me a feminist. I really don't give one crap one way or another, but I can tell you this. A lot of these men, these podcast hosts on the right that like to think of themselves as these big masculine men and what am I getting out of it? I can tell you this.
There's that feminism.
All right, I believe I'm a woman of virtue,
coming
right?
out.
Yeah, there's the feminism. Oh, and then you're interrupting me too,
Didn't
which
take
is great.
long,
I let
did
you
it? Didn't
talk.
take
It's my
long,
turn.
did it?
Okay. I love this
Thank you,
whole
Mr.
thing
Producer.
of like, if you're a
So-
female conservative.
Yeah, if you'd be ready with the pause button, that'd be a lot better. But real quick, someone's asked, what is a natalist? Okay, that's someone who is pro-birth. Okay, an anti-natalist is someone like a pro-abort. Okay?
Just a physical act.
It's just the physical act. If you're someone who is pro the physical act of childbearing, that is something that is really, really.
It diminishes the role of a woman.
If that's your sole purpose, if that is your sole purpose, I think it diminishes the role of the women, and it is something that is it just does violence. It's not a good thing.
You know what comes to my mind? And boy, I just thought of this right now. When you've got Democrats calling women, what was the term? What was the phrase?
Baby maker. That's what they accuse us of saying.
Yeah, they literally will not refer to them as a woman, but just a child bearer, or it's that kind of stuff. That's the same kind of thing, only it's from the right side of the view, if you will. Natalist is just a woman is I don't want to be graphic here, but a baby making machine, and that is not what God intended.
Correct.
That's only part of it.
That you're completely missing the point if that's where you're coming from. Now, Tomi Lahren, again, we're looking at two sides of the right-wing party, and we're just saying, look, I'm not against either one of these two, but I do think that they are really, really looking at the reaction, at the consequence. They're not looking at the core values. And that's where I think we're really messing up.
I might push back on a little bit of this here. I don't think either one of them have a very good biblical worldview.
Possibly.
That's just me. And that's why I don't necessarily care to listen to them too much. They do say things that I think we can learn from. I think the phrase I used with you the other day is they're both just shock podcasters.
They're shock jocks.
Shock jocks.
They're riding the shock. So just a little bit further, Mr. Producer. Next clip, and we'll pull through this.
I'm a woman of virtue. I happen to be independently successful. I have a husband who's not only a former professional athlete, but is currently a professional baseball coach. So is he not a masculine man? I mean, I'm confused here. What's your concept of a masculine man? Mine is a man who respects me.
Yeah, that misses the point, though. Like, you're still not contending with the argument that I'm making.
What's your point?
I'm saying inside of society, right this second, right, masculinity is not only punished, but also women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement?
I'm a woman of virtue. I happen to be.
That's a legitimate question.
Because I'm supposed to die for you. If
that's right.
If there's if I get married, both of you gentlemen know this. If someone's bumping around in the night, who gets up with the shotgun?
Yeah,
it's not her, right? So, does a woman have a responsibility? And I think we in the right wing we've become so afraid.
That's it.
Of the woke culture saying, "Oh no, you believe in gender roles." Well, there are gender roles.
Amen.
And there is an interplay between the sexes. There is a way that this is all supposed to play out. And men do have responsibilities. By the way, you're supposed to die to yourself. Especially if you're a Christian, you're supposed to submit to your wife. You're supposed to die. You're supposed to lay down your life. You're supposed to take your needs and lay them out before, look, I am going to sacrifice for you. I am going to give for you. That's what a man's supposed to do. What's a woman supposed to do?
John Arthur, with all of this gender stuff that's going on in the culture today, you talked about, well, are there gender roles? Well, yeah, there are. God made it that way.
Yep.
God gave women and men gender roles. Has it right there in Genesis.
Yep.
Talks about gender roles. Now, the thing is that because of all of these things that are going on, this him, he, her, them, they, all of this nonsense that's going on, and the trans stuff, and
The sexual revolution.
all of this reevaluation and all this kind of nonsense that's happening in the culture. People are all scared about talking about gender nowadays because why? Afraid to hurt somebody's feelings or to upset somebody or to whatever.
Yep.
It's part
Who
of the
knows
woke
what'll
ideology.
happen?
Yep.
Upset somebody, make somebody mad, offend somebody, or whatever the case may be. But here, we have specific gender roles that were made specifically by God that are put in a book that was given to us by God, and it lays out the rules for everything in that book for life.
Yep.
And when we abide by it, it's a well-oiled machine.
Yep. And again, it's not just our opinion. It's also the opinion of the manufacturer of the universe. He wrote an instruction manual, said this is how it is.
Amen.
And the Proverbs 31 woman is an intelligent, well-rounded, rational entrepreneur who takes care of the family. And so we have a little bit more from these guys, but I'm going to say pause on that. I'm going to not. I actually want to get a woman on the panel here because Miss Nikki wasn't here and she totally agrees with this, but I'd like to get this lady's opinion. In a public speaking event, this lady pulled up this lady was asked to describe what gender roles were. And I couldn't find the whole clip. I just found the social media short. I had a hard time chasing down the original. So let's just listen to what this lady has to say about her responsibilities. It's cut number 13, Mr. Producer. Cut number 13. What is a woman's responsibility in the relationship?
God made Adam a suitable helpmate. And he made that helpmate not because she's weaker, but because God has given men a capacity and a responsibility that women do not have. And we have to be honest about it. We can say he's not a man, he doesn't know how to lead, he doesn't whatever. There's still a capacity inside of him that God did not give us as women. And one of the biggest examples that I can give of that, imagine it's raining and you're in New York City. And if you've ever been to New York City or in France and it starts raining and people start selling umbrellas on the street, those $5, $10 umbrellas, they're not worth much, but they get the job done until you get home. Imagine you have that man. You have the man that gets the job done, isn't anything special, but he gets the job done. That man, no matter how little you view him, is made to handle the rain. You were not made to handle the rain, but you were made to hold up that which can handle the rain. If you didn't have that umbrella, you would come back home smelling like what you were poured on, what poured on you. When a man comes back in as that umbrella, he gets dried quickly, water repellent, it falls off of him, and no matter how equipped you thought he was, he still was built for the rain. The difference also, some of you want that Neiman Marcus umbrella. Some of you want the wood handle. Those things are heavy. And if God gave you a man like that, then you have to be the woman that can hold up that man. Because an umbrella that is not used, it can be for the rain, for the sun. It shields, it provides shade, it allows what's under it not to be touched. We are the vessel, not weaker. We are the vessel that was meant to let the one that God gave us be held up and used for what he was made. So now, as a wife, I want to say, I don't want to get wet. I don't want a sunburn. My skin's not built for that. So instead, I'm going to let the man be who he was meant to be. And if God gave me, which he did, my man's about as heavy as this table. That means God made me capable of holding him up. If my man is not doing what he was made to do, it's because I, as his wife, am not holding him up. One thing I will credit myself to is that man can come and do what God has him to do, because on the back end, he is being held up and held down. Not about me, but to say this about submission. If
Mic drop.
Mic drop moment. And by the way, so that's a weird setup that she did, and it was a little bit odd, but by the end, I hope you guys understood what she was saying. It's about a team. And by the way, for those of you thinking, but wait a minute, the Bible says weaker vessel. It does say weaker vessel, depending upon which translation you're reading. If you look at the Greek word, that is the word for the finer china or the finer pottery. You would have wood bowls and you'd have pottery bowls. She's the one that you break out on Sunday. She's not the one to be tossed around. She's not the hard stone or wood thing to be chipped away at and damaged. She's the finer vessel, weaker, finer. It's not a mistranslation per se, but it's just a word in Greek that I think needs a little bit of speaking.
Yeah.
Needs a little bit of speaking to, but it is the weaker vessel, the one that could easily break, because it is the finer vessel, not because she's less. That is the Christianity that we need to be putting
Embracing.
out there. By the way, someone says, where can I find this video? First, Brad A. You can find at Further Every Day on YouTube or Rumble. In a day or so, this will be up, and you'll be able to find a bibliography of all the links that we do. Links in the description below, as always, if you're on YouTube or Rumble right now. At Further Every Day, we always provide that so that you guys can see
that
it.
short will be in there.
M. Axe Murder. What a name. I'd like to have my daughter hear that as well. Glad you guys can find that. These are some good shorts. And Miss Nikki agrees. My mom said it this way. She goes, the man's job is to provide the home. The woman's job is to make it a home. And that was her short, truncated version. Whether that is with children. Maybe you can't have children. Okay, maybe the children die. But the woman's job is to provide the fellowship and the spirit, the warmth, the heart. The man's the muscle, the woman's the heart. And together, hopefully there's some brains in there, depending upon who it is. Sometimes it is the woman who has the brains, okay? That does happen. But the purpose is man is supposed to protect, the woman is supposed to build the home. And that can be in a situation, my family's like that. My dad got terribly sick. He worked for the Defense Department, got very, very sick. Okay. He was exposed to stuff he should have never been exposed to while working. And later on in life, he became ill. That doesn't mean my dad is less of a biblical man, or
Amen.
my mom is less of a biblical
Amen.
woman, because she stepped up.
That's
she
right.
held up the man, and for sick, better or poor, sickness and health.
So he could be the man that he is.
Yeah, and she's
Correct.
providing. That is the purpose of women in the marriage, and in the greater context of society. Andrew Wilson's not wrong. Women are uniquely qualified to continue the human race, but putting it down to the level of it's exclusively a natalist issue, I really think is a fail. And I think we as Christians, we need to be clear about our message. It's not that women are baby machines. That is not Christ. That is not God Almighty. That is not the Bible. The Bible does not say that, does not lay that out. Are women to have children when possible? Yeah, it's an honor. It's a glory to God. But you both have a responsibility. And I think Wilson does bring out something important. Women have forgotten that they have a responsibility too. Men should be held to account, but both sides have a responsibility.
And I thought the woman there in that short, she articulated that thing so well, because she wasn't elevating man above. She wasn't elevating the woman above. She was truly showing the teamwork that is necessary, fulfilling the roles that God had placed. If you want a successful marriage, That's what's got to happen.
See, that was the difference right there between the clip with Tomi Lahren and that lady.
Yeah.
Tommy doesn't know, and God bless her. I don't even fault Tomi Lahren for being confused.
Right.
Because
she doesn't know. She doesn't know.
Sorry, guys. I'm a basic Baptist. Okay, Southern Baptist. I really don't like to typically affiliate myself with denominations, but that's where I fellowship, and I'm underneath the Southern Baptist pastor. Look, evangelicals, we really have a lot of thinking to do. Our Catholic brothers and sisters have done a lot better job thinking. I don't agree with a lot of the thoughts that are thunk, but the magisterium and some of that stuff is I feel like it's an accretion, but not the debate for the day. The Catholics, at least they think about what they believe. At least they're very clear and they have reasonable arguments that are thought out. I think by and large, the West, whatever denomination you are or flavor you are, you need to think more. Doesn't matter how much you've thought, you need to think more. You need to think about why do you believe what you believe.
And hopefully this podcast helps stir people to that.
It's not going to be thinking for you, but hopefully you guys say, wait a minute, that is interesting. What responsibilities does a couple have together, and how does that tie into the Bible? Because what you're seeing around us is the West is falling, and I really blame the church for this and the members thereof. That includes me. Okay, I in my own way have contributed to the fall of the West, and this isn't a woke guilt sort of thing. This is a no. We could all be a little bit smarter. We could all love God a little bit more. And loving God isn't just this emotion you have or the amount of time you spend in his word. It is an act of intentionality. And I think that we've kind of failed on that as a whole. And Tomi Lahren and Andrew Wilson both, I think, have ultimately not thought through very well from their biblical perspectives.
And I agree with you because from the looks of it, people have drifted away from the church and drifted towards the government.
Correct.
I mean, if you look, you see where people have drifted more towards what's going on with and wanting government stuff and drifted away from the church. And it's sad.
It's because we failed to be the salt and light that we're called to be.
Yes, that's exactly right.
And so then you get stories like this. Moving into, how'd you like the segue?
Good segue.
Oh,
the segue.
Golf
What
shops.
Oh my!
This is how we get into situations like this, where free speech is, I think, really misunderstood. Our founding fathers did not define free speech as unlimited speech. There are things that you were not supposed to be able to do. There are things that, but it really comes down to free speech is absolute only in the fact that it is not an action against someone else, that it doesn't take away the rights of someone else. And in a recent case, I just want to play a couple clips here from a NBC news segment on a young lady who suffered from ultimately the internet. This is us, guys. This is what we do on X, on Twitter. It's a sad story. Go ahead and play the first clip. This is just for your benefit, number 14, sir.
In her first TV interview, Ole Miss freshman Mary Kate Cornett told me how she became famous on the internet and social media in the worst possible way. In February, an online rumor went viral, claiming an Ole Miss sorority sister slept with her boyfriend's father. Then, someone attached Cornett's name and photo to it. Do you know why the rumor started?
No clue. No clue. I had zero knowledge of this.
In her first TV interview,
go ahead and cut it.
Ole Miss freshman
Mr. Producer,
Mary
you got to be
Kate
quick with that
Cornett
button there.
told
Thank you. So, the claim was made that this young lady had interactions of an intimate nature with her mother or with her boyfriend and his father. That doesn't sound like, okay, so that's just a mean high school rumor. Let's go a little bit further, Mr. Producer. Next clip.
This disgusting rumor was a top trending topic on Twitter.
Within 2.5 hours. Later that night, around 7 p.m., I was #1 trending in the United States. I felt so helpless and so alone because so many people were hating on me for something that I had no idea anything about.
This disgusting
So-
rumor was
This gal was #1 trending on X
Within
in
hours.
2 hours. Don't know who started the rumor, but this woman, her name is now everywhere. And I actually want to play the next clip, Mr. Producer, because it gets even worse.
soon. The rumor was picked up by ESPN host Pat McAfee, though he didn't use her name.
This is what is being reported by everybody on the internet. Dad had sex with son's girlfriend.
Has anyone apologized to you?
No. No. They have not at all. I want these famous people to know that I was not famous before this. I'm not a public figure that you can go talk about on your show to get more views. I'm not. Sorry. Nobody knows who I am, or nobody did know who I was. But them pressing this and pushing it farther made my situation so much worse.
Soon,
So,
the rumor was picked
thank you, Mr. Producer. Not a public figure. That's an important piece of this. She's not a public figure, but now she is. And I want to go just a little bit further. I want to go to the aftermath of this, and then I want to break this down. Mr. Producer, 17.
Cornette says she hit rock bottom when she realized her name would forever be linked to the rumor spread online.
I don't think that these boys realize what they're doing to people. It's awful. It's awful. And having your life ruined by people who have no idea who you are is the worst feeling in the world. It makes you feel so alone.
Cornette now wants justice. Her lawyer says she's been defamed and is a victim of cyberbullying.
The rumor is false. People promoted it without looking into it. You can't lie for money.
Are there laws that protect Mary Kate? Because it seems like the internet, social media, it's the wild, wild west.
To some degree, the law hasn't caught up with the speed at which a lie travels online and the fact that it's now kind of anchored to her name forever. But defamation exists. There's growing protections against cyberbullying. There's growing protections against, making fake pictures, which has also happened to Mary Kate. The legal regime is catching up.
For now, she says she's leaning on her friends and family, including her father.
I just wonder why. Why my daughter? She wasn't looking for any of this. She never asked for any attention. She's just trying to be a freshman in college.
Thank you, Mr. Producer.
Cornette said,
So that dad at the end, I think, really caught the biggest issue. Whether or not you believe this young lady, you do know that this has happened, and it is truly a common occurrence now. And those of us who were in high school or in some high school group, I was homeschooled, but I was around high school groups. You guys know how easy this would be to pick up. A couple things. Founding fathers, they did not believe that free speech was an excuse to commit crimes. Now, what is a crime? And this is something that I think has to be laid out. I looked for this, and this is by memory, so take it as you will. If someone finds this, send us a note at Further Every Day on YouTube or on Rumble. But I was looking for the court case. There was a court case, I believe, in the late 1700s, early 1800s, where they decided that if someone was a public figure, free speech, libel and slander are hard to cover, but free speech about their personal matters was fair game because they were a public figure. If the town drunk, for example, however, or if, Mary Sue, the parishioner, or Mary Kate, or whatever her name is, just going to college, is published, her private affairs are published, which this isn't a crime necessarily. It should be a crime, but her private affairs are published. In this case, not true. You are bringing someone into the public light who should not be brought into the public light. The press should not print the private affairs of the town drunk or someone else unless they run for mayor, unless they put themselves in public office. If they want to become the pastor of the local church, then it's of interest to the public. But the damage that can be done if an individual is published, the problem is now we all have these things we call a phone or an iPad. It's connected to the internet, and we can post on X, on Facebook, on Instagram about other people. So I'm not sure where the free speech issue comes down to, other than there has to be a crime. There has to be this has to be some sort of crime to make some sort of vicious libel that is long-term injurious to an individual. I'm not sure what that looks like as far as legal proceeding from a constitutional perspective, because it's going to be hard to skin that kitty.
I think the lawyer really summed it up really well. The legal aspect is catching up to this. And this is something that Congress has known for years. They understood this early on in the Facebook days. They could see where it was going to go. So I'd lay this at the hands of our government for not defining it better and not having laws in place to deal with it. I will also say this from a personal perspective, and I think this would do well for all of us to really contemplate. When it comes to social media, we need to be careful, extremely careful, about what we just retweet, about what we do a like on, about what we comment on. Because every one of those actions impacts the algorithm by which that platform is operating. This girl should not have been famous in 2.5 hours.
No.
That's insane. And furthermore, of all the areas, of all the colleges that you would have expected this kind of story to come out of, the University of Mississippi? Help me here. That is so Bible Belt, it isn't even funny. I mean, it is downright straight. And to have that kind of a story come out of there, to me, is absolutely preposterous. I think she does have a legal case. I think she should pursue it. And my gut tells me she comes away a winner on it financially. But let me give you the backside of this, guys. And this is why we need to be careful with what we're doing. I want you to think about her if she was going to be a future wife.
Imagine how damaging that is.
That is incredibly damaging. I want you to think about her trying to get a job.
It's going to be hard now.
If not impossible.
And again, I mean, I'm just assuming that
you've robbed her of a future.
I'm assuming that everything that she's saying is true. And again,
my duly noted. Good.
My suspension
Yes.
of disbelief is very, very, the threshold for that's very low here.
Yep.
I believe her.
Yep.
Okay. This is one of the situations. It doesn't look like it's necessarily right or wrong. Someone says, so this is from Dynamix. Not Dynamix. AZ Patriot 17. She's making herself more famous by publicizing it. I do think you have to get out of this. Just put yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Imagine you're known as that, and you don't ever talk to anyone. It's going to look like you're holding your head in shame.
Yep.
So it's just and that's the whole point. It's like a false SA claim against a man. So you say that this man committed sexual assault, and he could never get away from it. This woman did this horrible, nasty deed. She's never going to get away from it. So there does need to be some sort of penalty for people who make accusations that are just insane.
And can we say that's the very reason why Biden wanted a quote unquote a truth police?
Yeah, but the problem
is
for
a political reason.
For a political reason.
Right.
So all I got to say is that we can have freedoms if we have responsibilities and if we have penalties. And so there has to be some sort of freedom with a responsibility and a penalty for failing to adhere to the responsibility.
Sad story. Really sad.
Again, I'm inclined to believe this one, and it's just horrific.
To your earlier point, which I think is really well made, this is more common than we think.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that really needs to be understood here. Guys, we need to be responsible when we're on social media.
Yep.
I've made some posts in the past that it's like, Charlie, that was a little strong. That should have been left alone. And I think we need to really think about how we post and what we're doing, because we are affecting things. And for her to go viral in 2.5 hours, I still, that's not right. What are we consuming on what are we consuming on our social media?
Mm-hmm.
What are we looking for?
That's it.
You're looking for trash stories like that? That should have never made it out of the first 15 minutes.
Correct. So someone, King's Kid, 1775 says, God hates a liar. That makes it a crime. I agree. I think that there should be a way to deal with that, and it's not good. Speaking of dealing with things as a society, there is a new development in biotechnology. You might have heard about it. It's kind of interesting. Mr. Producer, cut 19. Should we be bringing back extinct species?
What?
Ethical concerns have been raised after the dire wolf has been allegedly resurrected. The dire wolf, says the article here, went extinct about 10,000 years ago. However, so this is a quote from the article, link in the description at Further Every Day on YouTube or Rumble. However, a number of bioethicists and ecologists say that they are skeptical that the animals created are actually dire wolves, and that there are ethical concerns, including where the animal should be kept and if they ever would survive in the wild. All claims of de-extinction are the invocation of a metaphor in what they have produced, and what they will at some point produce may be technologically impressive, but they are not and never can be the actual previously extinct creatures. Samuel Gorovitz, professor of philosophy at Syracuse University, the leader of the development of medical ethics field, told ABC News. So if you haven't heard about this, buried a little bit, dire wolves are back. And like I said, dire wolves are back, and it's a thing. And they are, it's the DLC that we never asked for. I mean,
New hunting season.
More wolves. And so they're a large wolf, and what they mixed them with is a gray wolf to create a dire wolf. I guess Mr. Bruce is going to keep doing that. I'm kidding. It's okay. So with that said, it is all a huge mistake.
John Arthur, real quick, don't blame this on me. You asked me to do
that. I know. Man, so
we know better, Ryan.
We know better things.
So they're going to create as many of these creatures that are ultimately a de-extinction level event, if you will. They're going to try to de-extinct all these animals that were previously extinct. And I think it's interesting, but like we read from that article, there are a couple of ethical questions that arise. Because again, this is headed towards humans. I mean, it's just a matter of time. It's definitely on the table. But also, should we be reintroducing animals back into the wild that are previously extinct, or even worse, genetically modified? Genetically modified wolves. It's like Jurassic Park, but more furry. Same amount of blood, just more furry. Send them to San Francisco. They'll enjoy that.
Should we be introducing animals that are like dire wolves into the population that are, of
that wolves,
is an animal that is,
it raises questions
beyond voracious.
I think it's playing with fire.
So I'm not against it in principle, but I'm against it in principle. And what I mean is this. I think it's a great thing to see species in genetic diversity that have gone away and been extinct, reintroduced back into the genome. The problem I have with it is, in playing God, we're going to create problems. We all heard about Dolly, the sheep, right? Where did that ever go? Why aren't we there now? And so there's this whole thing about cloning animals. What happens? Cloning animals, messing with the DNA in utero of animals, which is effectively how we got dire wolves to be reinstituted as a species, supposedly. Again, some people think that they're just gray wolves with some dire DNA. I don't know, but I think it's I think it's interesting, but it really is going to head towards human trials. You just know that they're going to do that soon. So for right now,
I got to say this, John Arthur. I got somebody that's in the comments that is along with me. Yes.
More hunting?
Man, you ain't kidding. Somebody wants to know what woolly mammoth tastes like.
I don't know.
Right on. I'm with you there, buddy. Boom. Yeah.
And no, we didn't plant that person, but we did have the meme ready. So the woolly mammoth.
I would too.
But you want to know what would be interesting here?
Good steaks, I bet.
So, we were talking a little bit beforehand about, the life of DNA. Boy, wouldn't it be interesting if we could do a Tyrannosaurus Rex? Hello? That would really put to bed a lot of questions.
Well, again, it's the same thing, Charlie. I don't have a meme for that. I only have one for the woolly mammoth.
I was gonna say, why are you looking at me? We don't have a meme for that one.
I know.
Where do you turn the Rex loose at?
I don't want any of them loose. Didn't we learn anything from those movies?
Here's what I would say to that.
Turn the dire wolf loose in China.
The dire wolf.
Hey, now
I would do this. Shoot the thing when it's born. We're done. We did it. We're done.
No, they're puppies now.
Yeah, oh yeah,
they're puppies. The creator from Game of Thrones went and snuggled with one. Yeah, so it's kind of weird. But anyway, so you can't unextinct an animal that only God created. Says King's Kid 1775. Axe Murder says, I do want to find out what a woolly mammoth tastes like. It's not genetically a dire wolf in the case of the dire wolf. I probably agree with you.
Yeah.
It's definitely some, forgive me, bastardization here. And Alan 101, it's not nice to fool with Mother Nature.
Amen. Oh, man, What a commercial.
Right?
What a commercial. Love that reminder.
Hey, that'd be a great T-shirt, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It's not nice to fool with Mother Nature. Yeah.
Yep.
With that said, we'll see. They are indeed working on the woolly mammoth. One more time, Mr. Producer. Wait.
Where? Come on.
He can't do it.
Too slow.
He can't do it.
Oh, man. He's slow.
Okay.
Oh, man.
So with that said, Trump also, just one more thought on this before we move off. Trump is thinking about removing a bunch of animals from the endangered species list based on this. I mean, his
I have
take
no
is,
time for this.
If you could just unextinct them, then we can build in new places. I mean, if you did dire wolves, you could do anything else. You got one. Okay. All right. Jeff Goldblum said it. Yeah. So Axe Murray says, you didn't. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they never stopped to think whether or not they should. Yeah, Jeff Goldblum. I don't know how we didn't learn from the Jurassic 1. Then I had no interest in 2 and 3. And the Jurassic World. Come on, guys! How many times you got to build a park, put a bunch of children in them, and then wonder,
John Arthur,
how did this happen?
Are you excited for what is it? The
Jurassic Park 37?
Yeah, Jurassic Park 37 with with Black Widow?
With Scarlett Johansson? I mean, no.
Did anybody watch
me neither.
Jurassic Park 40?
Red-haired Darth Vader? No.
I saw Jurassic Park 40. Did anybody see that
lib.
one?
Not my type.
That one was pretty good.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
It was in China.
So, okay. Moving on. I think we've thoroughly derailed here. I do want to get to, finally, and we can give it some time, if you've been following along with us in The Great Divorce. The Book Corner is here. So that's going to be cut number 22. Yep, Mr. Producer. So for those of you who don't know, The Great Divorce is a book by C.S. Lewis. Next cut, Mr. Producer, 23. Quick overview. It is written by C.S. Lewis. It is an allegorical representation of a type of heaven and hell, or purgatory, as they might be if the final judgment wasn't final, if parole was available, and if God allowed the dissidents of hell to holiday on the edges of heaven, seeing the beauty and majesty, would they be wooed by the angelic and glorified representatives of heaven, calling out to them. So, if you're not familiar with C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of Narnia, good stuff. He also wrote some serious work, Mere Christianity. Highly recommend. Yeah. But The Great Divorce is indeed one of my favorite works of fiction from him. It is an allegory. Lewis lays out in here, he does a thought experiment. Just imagine all your friends, your family, those who do not believe on the Lord their God. Maybe this is you. You're not decided on a God. What would happen if in the expanse between eternity and now, God allowed the souls who were not committed to him the opportunity to see hell, the opportunity to see heaven, and to kind of experience the edges of both, not complete one way or the other, and God in his way would woo. C.S. Lewis went out of his way to say, this is not my view of the afterlife. This is not my view of heaven and hell. I'm playing an experiment with, it's an anthropological thought experiment. How does man react to the wooing of God? And we've been through several people. We've been through the liberal theologian, the individual who wanted his rights. He wanted his rights. I have my rights. I don't need God's charity. I've been a good guy all my life, and I want my rights. Well, you haven't been a good guy. Your poor wife didn't think so. All of us who work the floor at the factory didn't think so, right? So we've seen these different people. We've seen the pathologies of folks who ultimately will refuse God. So this week, today's passage, we're going through chapter 7. And why did God ordain this reality? Why did he lay things out the way he did? And we're going to go ahead and look at the order of heaven. This is number 26. We're going to read out of here real quick, and then we're going to discuss. And I hope you guys join us because it's a really interesting book.
Great book.
So, the order of heaven, go ahead, number 26, Mr. Producer. Thinking of going back, said a voice close at hand. This is the narrator. I turned and saw a tall ghost standing with his back against a tree, chewing a ghostly chew root. It was that of a lean, hard-bitten man. This man has come out of hell to heaven to holiday, along with the narrator, who's also coming from hell to the edges of heaven to holiday. It was a hard, lean-bitten man with gray hair and a gruff but not uneducated voice, the kind of man I have always instinctively felt to be reliable. I don't know, said I. Are you? Said the narrator. The ghost, yes, it replied. I guess I've seen about all there is to see. You don't think of staying, says the narrator. The ghost, that's all propaganda, it said. Of course, there never was any question of our staying. You can't eat the fruit, you can't drink the water, and it takes you all of your time to walk on the grass. A human being couldn't live here. All of that idea of staying is just an advertisement stunt. So, what you see here is a skeptic. When coming to heaven, and C.S. Lewis lays out masterfully here the idea that heaven is more real than the earth on which we live. The grass bloodies your feet. The water you can walk on because it's more solid than you. The raindrops are like missiles falling from the sky, ready to hit you with the utmost of force. To be able to pluck a leaf is heavy. What Lewis is attempting to do here, he's attempting to draw the distinction that the reality that we see here is just a shadow. It's really a figment. These ghosts are really just humans, but they are barely real in comparison to God in his reality. So, going forward in that chapter, the ghost says, or the narrator says this, then why did you come if there was never a hope and if it was all a lie anyway? The ghost says, oh, I don't know. Just to have a look around. I'm the sort of chap who likes to see things for himself. Wherever I've been, I've always had a look at anything that was being cracked up. When I was out east, I went to see Peking. What was Peking like? Says the narrator. The ghost. Nothing to it. Just one darn wall inside another. Just a trap for the tourists. I've been pretty well everywhere. Niagara Falls, the pyramids, Salt Lake City, the Taj Mahal. What was it like? Asked the narrator. Next cut, Mr. Producer. Not worth looking at all. They're all an advertisement. They're all advertising stunts, rather. All run by the same people. There's a combine, a world combine. That just takes an atlas and decides where they'll have a site. Doesn't matter what they choose. Anything will do as long as the publicity is properly managed. The narrator. And you've lived down there under in the town for some time. Again, speaking about hell. In what they call hell, yes, it's a flop too. They lead you to expect red fire and devils and all sorts of interesting people sizzling on grids, Henry VIII and all of that. But when you get there, it's just like any other town. I prefer it up here, says the narrator. The ghost. Well, I don't see what all the talk is about, said the hard-bitten ghost. It's just as good as any other park to look at, and darned uncomfortable. Narrator. There seems to be some idea that if one stays here, one would get, well, solider, grow acclimatized. The ghost. I know all about that, said the ghost. Same old lie. People have been telling me that sort of thing all my life. They told me in the nursery that if I were good, I'd be happy. Here's where C.S. Lewis really gets to the crux of this person that he's attempting to split open. They told me in the nursery if I'd be good, I'd be happy. They told me at school that Latin would get easier as I went on. After I'd been married a month, some fool was telling me that there was always difficulties at first, but with tact and patience, I'd soon, quote, settle down, unquote, and like it. And all through 2 wars, what didn't they say about the good time coming, if only I'd be a brave boy and go on being shot at? Of course, they'll play the old game here if anyone is fool enough to listen. Next cut, Mr. Producer. But who are they? This might be run by someone different? Or this might be run by someone different. The ghost. Entirely new management, eh? Don't you believe it? It's never a new management. You'll always find the same old ring. I know all about the dear, kind mummy coming up to your bedroom and getting all she wants to know out of you, but you always found out that she and father were really the same firm. Didn't we find that both sides in all the wars were being run by the same armament firms, or the same firm, which is behind the Jews, the Vatican, the dictators and democracies, and all the rest of it? All this stuff up here is run by the same people as the town, and they are just laughing at us. The narrator goes on. What would you like to do if you had your choice, I asked.
This is the great question.
So here's the question that everyone has to contend with. There you go, said the ghost with a certain triumph, asking me to make up a plan. It's up to management to find up God. It's up to God to find something that doesn't bore us, isn't it? It's their job. Why should we do it for them? That's just where all the parsons and moralists have got things upside down. They keep on asking us to alter ourselves, but if the people who run the show are so clever and powerful, why don't they find something to suit their public? All this poppycock about growing harder so that the grass doesn't hurt our feet now. There's an example. What would you say if you went to a hotel where the eggs were all bad, and when you complained, the boss, instead of apologizing, changing his dairyman, just told you that you had to get to like bad eggs in time? Why did God order the universe this way? Why did God decide to have a heaven and hell? Why did God decide to have a right and wrong? Why did God decide to make some things pleasurable and some things sinful? Why did God write things up the way he did? And why do I have to change? There'll be a lot of people in hell who are asking those questions.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think it's going to be the question, why would I change? Am I not good enough by myself? I'm already perfect. My body is good enough. I don't need to change, says the 350-pound land whale. I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that to make a point. Why should I change? And that's a question that I think we need to answer. Why do we need to change? Why do we need to become less sinful? Why do we need to control our lusts? Why do we need to control our passions? What's the purpose of that? Why does this earth exist the way that it does?
Those are all unbelievable apologetic questions.
You know,
and it's one of the reasons why we do what we do here. I'll go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, in regards to what this guy's saying, is exactly confirms what I was saying earlier about the church and the government. Here's this guy, you know, he's asked, well, what would you think if you had a choice? And here he is saying exactly that. He's like, well, why do I need to make the choice? These people need to make a plan for me. They need to take care of everything. They need to do all of this for me. I shouldn't have to be doing anything. Why should I do anything? I just need to sit back here and just have to be taken care of and
cater to me.
That's
I
right.
am the important one. Cater
Exactly.
to me. Give it all to me.
I'm going to move away from the church and go to the government and get taken care of.
Correct.
Because I'm important and they need to take care of me.
So Carol Sorensen says, without God, we can't change. Peaches 54, Jesus can't have a relationship with chronic sin. So here's what I would say. I'd say that Jesus can have a relationship with chronic sin. He has a relationship with us. Here's where I do think there's something interesting to be gleaned here. And it's interesting. When I read The Great Divorce, I was kind of coming along on my reading, my studying of the Bible. And for those of you who are just joining us and haven't heard this yet, I'll repeat what I said a couple of weeks ago. I think heaven is realer than you can know. And the universe, as it stands, time, space, matter, material, everything that we see in front of us, all of time, was created by God. You know, you had this sans time, sans the universe, not before, because there's no before from God's perspective. The time is something that does not exist to God the way it exists to us. He created time, and he sees time, but he's not restrained to it. But sans time, without time, God created time, space, material, matter to create fellowship. You had this unity, diversity, and community in the Trinity. You had love, friendship, you had community, but this God, where you have three in one, decided to make more after its own kind, to reproduce. And it's not going to be exactly the same thing, just as a child is not the same thing as a parent. But God decided to create a universe. He has willed, I'll say it this way, because there's no past tense. God wills a universe to be created. And when this universe is done, there you are either with God, standing with him, fellowshipping with him, or you are standing before the Lamb in the lake of fire. Revelations, I believe it's Revelations 8:14. In the smoke of their or 14:8, I might be missing that up. The smoke of their torment rises before the Lamb and the angels forever and ever. Speaking about those who are cast in the lake of fire. God is present. Where are you not, O God? In the heights of heaven or the depths of hell. The Lamb is present at the lake of fire. Those people are in the presence of the Lamb and the angels forever and ever. So again, what if there's a cordoning off of people in heaven, the immortal soul? Again, and this is kind of a Lewisite theory. Instead of the lake of fire being something that was created by God as the lake of fire specifically the fire, I think, might be his wrath. God isn't a just God. He is justice. God is not a God who concocted logic, reason, morality. He's the light bulb that emanates logic, rationality, love, morality. He is the source of it. So if God is the source of that, and you have people who are unrepentant, and given enough time, will not anyone become a Machiavellian character, a Hitler, a Napoleon? Given enough time with immortality, will you not eventually fall? And without Christ, without that oneness, that new creation, that's what Lewis is getting at here. And you're seeing people want God to cater to them. No. God created you in time, space, material. He created you so that you could fellowship with him. But to fellowship with him, you need to be a new creation. You need to be a new creature. And to do that, you can only do that through Christ. You can only do that through Christ. So I think that the idea that God has to cater to you is just so nonsensical. You will kneel by definition. It's not something that God's going to force you to kneel. By nature, you will kneel before the throne of God.
That is a really important point.
It's not even a choice.
He's not going to force you.
You're going to do it by nature.
You're going to do it by nature.
God is God. You kneel before God. It's not because you have to. It's because maybe you want to, like I do. Okay, I want to kneel before God. But I don't think I'm going to have a choice. Not in a Machiavellian sense. I think it's just what God is. He is righteousness. He is holy. He is majesty. And when we try to put God into this sort of box of he wants morality. Yes, he wants morality, but he is morality. God wants justice. He is justice. He is the source of all justice. I think sometimes we kind of demean God, not intentionally, but we kind of forget what and who he is. So C.S. Lewis, chapter 7. Chapter 8 next week. Actually, not next week. It'll be 2 weeks from now. And with that said, do you want to do final thoughts?
I think for me, my heart really goes out for people like Mary Kate. I just want to encourage our listeners and our viewers to really be careful with your social media. You impact things more than you think. And I want you to think about being a family member with her and how you try to deal with that kind of situation. I can't fathom that. So I think responsibility in our social media interactions is pretty important.
And I forgot one, or I saw after it was posted, one person responded, this is Radiant C on Rumble for PSB. At PSB for the Everyday Team, one of the 10 Commandments, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbors. Character assassination will be judged harshly. Assuming the young lady did the unthinkable acts, that still can be discussed between herself, her boyfriend's family, etc. Evil gossipers have no fear of God's judgment, indulging in other people's misery.
Wow. Good words.
So I think that we need to be wary of that, and we need to be breeding a culture that doesn't do that.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want people to think about men and women's responsibilities. And in today's culture, with the way men are being slammed for what they do or not, or just men, period. I mean, men are just being slammed so bad in today's culture about who they are, masculinity, or what they do for work or what they don't do for work, or any number of, I mean, you could lay it out on the table and they get slammed for it. It's ridiculous. But, women, support your man.
Yep.
Support your man, and you will be surprised what you get out of him.
Find a man that you can support.
Right.
Okay. First off, if you're single, make sure you find a man that you can support. And if you're married to a guy who, maybe he is that cheap umbrella, as the lady talked about.
Correct.
Make sure that you hold him up to the standard. You hold him up to keep the rain out, and you say, I expect you to hold to this standard. And then hold him up. Hold him up to provide, to do what the man has to do. And it's amazing. People have a nasty habit of living up to the expectations that you impose on them. It's really interesting. If you walk into your kid and they're playing Xbox, and you say, "Hey, you're stupid. You're a fool. How dare you? You're rotten. This or that." That kid is probably not going to get a whole lot better faster. Shame in that regard doesn't work too well. But if you're more like my dad, hey, I see your game in there. Taking a little break? Awesome. I know that schoolwork is pretty heavy. I'm sure that once you're done with your mental break here, you'll be ready to get all of that homework done on time and submitted on time, and then walk out of the room. It's interesting what that kid will do.
Yep.
When my father did a bunch of marital counseling, he had one old couple who gave him this story, and he shares this pretty often. This man, one day, they got home from the grocery store. They were, they just gotten married, and she was frustrated that he hadn't opened the door for her. She sat there and waited in the car for him. He didn't open the door. He got the groceries, went inside, was getting ready to go to bed. The lights were about to go out, and all of a sudden, the bedroom light came back on. The downstairs light came on. He came back outside and goes, "Is everything all right? Are you okay?" Yeah, I'm fine. Just wait for you to open the door for me." He never failed to open the door for her again.
That was the last time.
And she didn't say anything mean. She wasn't trying to be nasty, but she's like, "This is important to me. Could you open the door for me once in a while?" He never stopped opening the door. Some of you are going to say that that's evil and that's awful. Look, at the end of the day, I think you win a lot more with sugar than you do salt. Sometimes we need to, sometimes we do need to be spicy, salty people. But make sure that you're about winning people. I think that's the primary thing. We need to make sure that we are winning people over. And I'll leave you with this. This comes from Carol Sorensen. If we believe what the Bible says, then we believe in a God who spoke words and created the universe. Just in a moment. We are but a speck. Poof. Totally agree with that, Carol. Totally agree with that. That is the God that we serve, and I think we need to take pride in that. Paul says, I glory not in anything other than Christ. I revel in my salvation, and that is the one thing you can take pride in because you did nothing to earn it, which is awesome. With that said, we got nothing else. We love you so much.